The date is January 5. Beyond your frost-covered windows, the Austrian Alps loom like a wall of bone in the winter darkness. Snow has fallen without mercy for weeks, burying mountain passes and trapping villages in absolute isolation. Your attention keeps returning to one corner of the room. The spinning wheel sits there, silent. Next to it, a basket that should be empty. It is not. Raw flax fills it still, unfinished, untransformed. The deadline was clear. Every household knew. All thread must be spun before the 12th night ends. Before she comes to inspect, you did not finish. Something moves outside. Footsteps press through deep snow with deliberate rhythm. Coming toward your door. You know what walks through these mountains tonight. The one who checks whether you completed your work. The one who rewards diligence with silver and punishes failure by opening your belly, dragging out everything inside, and replacing your organs with straw and rocks. The footsteps stop at your door. The latch begins to lift. Welcome to the Pandora's project. The Alpine villagers have a name for what walks through that door. Frau Perchta. They do not speak it lightly. They know what she does to those who fail her inspection. They know about the knife. They know about the straw and stones. And they know that when the latch lifts on the 12th night, judgment has already been passed. If you believe these dark myths, strange histories, and forgotten legends are worth remembering, if you believe that the terrors our ancestors faced should not be lost to comfortable modern ignorance, you can help us continue this work by liking this video and subscribing. Your support keeps the candle lit. It allows us to keep exploring the shadows where history and horror intertwine. For over 1,000 years, something has moved through these mountains when winter is at its darkest. It inspects. It judges. It rewards the diligent with silver and punishes the failures in ways that make the living into warnings. The church called her a demon. The villages called her something older. And tonight, as the 12th night ends, she has come to see whether you finished your work. Part 1. The Lady of Two Faces. Her name changes depending on which valley you ask. In some Austrian villages, they call her Perchta. In Bavaria, she answers to Berchta. Further into the Swiss Alps, she becomes Bura or Bera. All these names come from ancient Germanic words meaning bright, shining, radiant. But what she brings to your door is not always light. For more than 1,000 years, she has walked these mountain regions. Before Christianity arrived in the Alps, before Rome extended its reach into these valleys, before anyone thought to write down what happened in the darkness between years, she was already here. The goddess of spinning, the guardian of the 12 sacred nights, the judge who appears when the old year dies and the new year struggles to be born. Describing her is difficult because she wears two faces, and you never know which one will appear at your threshold until she arrives. Sometimes she manifests as a beautiful woman, wrapped in white garments that seem to glow even in the deepest darkness. Her hair flows like spun silver or shines gold in the firelight. Her eyes are kind, almost gentle. She moves through villages with grace, blessing homes as she passes, leaving small gifts for the diligent, smiling at children who glimpse her through windows. This is the Perchta that good households see, the face you desperately want at your door. But sometimes she appears as something completely different. An old woman, bent and twisted by something that goes beyond ordinary aging. Her nose is long, hooked, made of iron in some accounts, sharp enough at the tip to use as a weapon. Her skin hangs gray and loose on a frame that seems too large for flesh to cover properly. The white robes are replaced by rags, stained with substances you cannot identify and would not want to examine closely. She reeks of decay, of garbage, of the straw she carries for stuffing into failures. The knife is always visible now. She does not hide her intentions. When this version of Perchta crosses your threshold, you know exactly what is about to happen. Which face appears is not random. It is not arbitrary. It is not the whim of a capricious deity. The face she shows you depends entirely on what she discovers during her inspection. Has your spinning been completed? Is your house properly clean? Did you consume the correct food on her feast night? Did you demonstrate appropriate respect for the sacred time? If the answer to these questions is yes, you see the beautiful woman, receive the blessing, find the silver coin. If the answer is no, you meet the hag, feel the knife, become the lesson. You do not choose which Perchta visits your home. Your actions make that choice for you. She is not two separate beings who happen to share a name. She is one entity with two aspects, two faces that are equally real, equally her, equally likely to manifest depending on what you have earned. A pure monster is simple to understand. You fear it, you avoid it, you know it wants to harm you. There is no complexity, no moral dimension, no relationship beyond hunter and prey. But Perchta offers something different. She offers a covenant, a transaction, a system of cosmic justice. You fulfill your obligations and she fulfills hers. You complete your work and she rewards you. You fail and she punishes you. It is not random. It is not cruel for the sake of cruelty. It is order, terrible and absolute order. When she comes with her knife, you cannot claim bad luck. You cannot argue that fate treated you unfairly or that the universe is cruel and random. If Perchta is cutting you open, it is because you failed. Because you did not do what everyone in your community understood must be done. Because you had every opportunity to avoid this outcome and chose not to take it. The responsibility is yours. The consequence is hers. When she arrives to reward, Perchta radiates an almost impossible beauty. The accounts from Alpine villages describe a woman whose white garments remain pristine despite the winter journey through deep snow. Her hair might be described as golden or silver or black as midnight, but it is always beautiful, always well kept, always a visible sign of the discipline and care she values. Her face appears young or ageless or simply difficult to look at directly because of how much light seems to emanate from her presence. She moves with grace that makes the brutal alpine winter feel less bitter. When she examines your spinning wheel and finds everything in order, she nods with satisfaction. When she walks across your clean floors, she smiles. This version of Perchta might stay for a while. She may warm herself at your fire, though she seems to need no warmth. She might accept the food you left for her, eating with delicate appreciation. She blesses your home before departing. The exact words vary between villages, but the effect remains constant. Protection, prosperity, the profound sense that you have been seen by something far greater than yourself and found worthy. Children who glimpse this Perchta through windows remember her as something close to a fairy, a spirit of genuine goodness. They grow up wanting to earn that smile, wanting to receive that silver coin. But those who fail her inspection? They remember something very different. What comes next is not punishment. It is correction. The knife is sharp. The cavity must be emptied. And what she uses to fill it back up transforms you into a lesson everyone else will understand. Part 2. The punishment. Frau Perchta does not lecture when she finds unfinished work. She does not issue warnings. She does not grant second chances. The time for working was before the 12th night ended. The time for excuses never existed in her system. She simply begins. She cuts you open. The knife is long, sharp, worn smooth by centuries of use. It parts flesh with the efficiency of a tool that has performed this task countless thousands of times. She does not hurry. There is no mercy in speed. The blade moves through skin first, then muscle, then the thin membrane that keeps your internal organs properly positioned. She reaches inside with hands that are always strong, whether they appear young and beautiful or old and gnarled. She finds your stomach, your intestines, all the organs that should have been filled with good food earned through productive work. She removes them, all of them. She empties you out completely, creating a cavity where your digestive system used to exist. Then, she fills that empty space with straw, with pebbles, with garbage, with the refuse of your household, the scraps that should have been disposed of properly, the worthless material that accumulated while you failed to do your actual work. She stuffs you full of everything you should have transformed but did not. The flax that should have become thread now fills your belly as useless straw. The wool that should have become cloth is replaced by rocks. You possessed raw materials. You had sufficient time. You owned the tools and the knowledge and the clear obligation. You wasted everything. Now you are waste yourself, packed with physical representations of your failure. Then she sews you back up. Some versions of this story claim she uses an iron needle, massive and crude, designed for working leather or heavy canvas rather than human flesh. She drives it through your skin with the same practical efficiency she brings to every aspect of this work. Other versions, stranger and somehow more disturbing, claim she uses a plowshare. Not a needle at all, but the heavy iron blade that breaks earth and prepares fields for planting. She threads it somehow, impossibly, because the normal rules of physics do not constrain beings like her. She stitches your belly closed with the fundamental tool of agriculture. The plowshare represents the beginning of the productive cycle. It is the first step in transforming wild land into cultivated earth, raw potential into actual sustenance. It prepares the ground for planting, for growth, for the food that keeps communities alive through winter. Perchta uses this tool to seal the wound she made in you. The person who refused to complete their own transformative cycle, who took raw materials and failed to turn them into something useful, who broke the chain of productivity that survival requires. She finishes what you started, but in the most perverted way imaginable. Instead of thread and cloth, she produces a corpse stuffed with garbage. That is your legacy. That is what your laziness created. The stitches are rough. They will hold because Perchta's work always holds, but they are not meant to be pretty. They are not intended for your comfort or dignity. They are meant to be seen, to be discovered by your neighbors in the morning, to serve as a warning to everyone else in the village. This is what happens when you fail to finish your spinning. This is the price of laziness. This is what judgment looks like when it comes with a knife. The punishment extends beyond lazy spinners, though they are her primary concern. Her standards cover all aspects of the 12 sacred nights, and she enforces every rule with the same terrible consistency. If you worked during the 12 nights when work was forbidden, she punishes you. The logic becomes clear when you understand the system. All work had to be finished before the sacred time began. Once the 12 nights started, spinning became forbidden. The wheel turning might tangle fate itself, might catch wandering spirits in its threads, might disrupt the cosmic order during the year's most vulnerable transition. You were required to finish before Christmas, and you were required to rest after. Both failure modes earned punishment. If you consumed the wrong food on Perchta's night, she punishes you. The 5 of January required specific meals. Fish and grain porridge. Nothing rich, nothing luxurious. If she cuts you open and finds meat in your stomach, or sweets, or anything else that violated her feast day requirements, she removes it. She replaces it with what you should have eaten. She teaches you the lesson you refused to learn through voluntary compliance. If your house was dirty when she arrived, she punishes you. The home had to be clean for inspection. Not just tidy, but truly clean. Every surface swept, every tool in its proper place, everything organized to demonstrate discipline and self-respect. A messy house suggested a messy soul, a fundamental lack of the standards that separate humans from animals. If you showed her disrespect, if you hid when she knocked, if you lied when she questioned you, if you pretended you were not home, she punishes you. She always knows. She's always watching. Her violence is never random, never arbitrary. It always fits the crime with the exactness of cosmic mathematics. The punishment matches the failure in a way that suggests genuine justice rather than mere sadism. Terrible justice. Horrifying justice. But justice nonetheless, following its own remorseless logic. You failed to finish spinning. The raw materials that should have become thread now become your stuffing. Straw fills the space where productivity should have grown. You are literally packed with your own failure, your own unfinished obligations, your own wasted potential made physical. You consumed forbidden food. She locates it inside you and extracts it surgically, replaces it with what you should have eaten. Your stomach becomes a lesson in proper diet, forcibly corrected by the only teacher who never accepts excuses or grants extensions. You left your house filthy. She might sweep your intestines across the dirty floor. Let them trail through the accumulated filth you could not be bothered to clean. Make your insides as messy as your outsides. Show everyone exactly what kind of person you were. You worked during the forbidden time, trying to manipulate fate through spinning when the wheel should have been silent. She tangles your own intestines like improper thread, knots them, weaves them into something unusable, just like the destiny you were attempting to interfere with. Every punishment is a mirror. Every consequence reflects the specific failure that earned it. Every act of violence carries symbolic weight that transforms it from simple cruelty into something that resembles cosmic law. She is not chaos. She is not random death or meaningless violence. She is order manifested with a knife. She is the living embodiment of consequences, of standards that cannot be negotiated, of the principle that actions produce results and failures demand prices. But the belly slitting was not her only method. Those who violated the sacred meal on her feast night, she corrected them differently. And the correction involved opening you up to see exactly what you had eaten. We will return to that. First, you need to understand what it meant when she arrived to reward instead of punish. Part 3. The reward and the silver coin. If Frau Perchta inspects your home and finds everything in proper order, the spinning completed to the last fiber, the house cleaned to the highest standard, the proper food consumed, the appropriate respect demonstrated, she does not leave empty-handed. She does not simply move on to the next house with neutral indifference. She rewards you with tangible proof of her approval. A silver coin appears. You find it on your spinning wheel when you wake on January 6, or tucked into your spinning basket, or placed on your doorstep where she knew you would see it first thing in the morning. Small, bright, valuable. More valuable than its material worth because of what it represents. Approval from a being who does not grant approval easily. Acknowledgement that you met a standard most people fail. Physical proof that you were judged and found worthy. More than the coin, she blesses your household for the coming year. The blessing is not vague or symbolic. It manifests in concrete ways you will notice over the following months. Your spinning will go smoothly, the thread forming evenly without tangles or breaks. Your crops will grow despite poor weather that ruins your neighbor's fields. Your animals will thrive when others sicken. 100 small instances of good fortune that you might not even recognize as blessings until you look back at year's end and realize how well everything went. Her favor brings prosperity that touches every aspect of your life. In Alpine villages across the centuries, women who completed their spinning woke on January 6 to find silver coins waiting. Their baskets stood empty. Every strand of flax had been transformed into perfect thread, wound neat on their spindles. Their houses gleamed from days of exhaustive cleaning. The floors they had swept until their backs screamed. The hearths they had scrubbed with freezing water. All of it had been seen. All of it had been judged acceptable. The coins sat there catching the weak winter light, proof that they had earned Perchta's blessing. Those families prospered. Their thread sold for the highest prices at market. Their children stayed healthy when fever swept through neighboring households. Their animals produced even in the deepest winter. The blessing was real. The reward was tangible. But other households were found at dawn with their bellies split open, sewn back with something too large to be a normal needle. The stitches were rough, visible even through clothing. The bodies had become heavy, sagging with weight that should not be there. The families knew before they looked. Everyone in the villages knew. The spinning had not been finished. The basket still sat half full beside silent wheels. And Perchta had kept her promise. The beautiful woman in white who smiled at the diligent was the same being who cut the lazy open. The same entity. The same judge. The face that appeared depended entirely on what she found during inspection. When Perchta arrives to reward, her presence transforms the house. The descriptions from Alpine folklore struggle to capture her radiance. A woman dressed in white, her garments somehow remaining clean despite the long winter journey through snow and darkness. Her hair might be golden or silver or black as the sky between stars, but it is always beautiful, always well-maintained, always a visible manifestation of the discipline and care she demands from others. Her face might appear young, or it might seem ageless, or it might simply be difficult to look at directly because of how much light pours from her presence. She moves with grace that makes the brutal alpine winter feel less harsh. When she examines your spinning wheel and finds every spindle empty, every basket of flax transformed into proper thread, she nods. When she walks across your floors and finds them swept clean, she smiles. This version of Perchta might stay for a while. She might warm herself at your fire, though she does not appear to need warmth the way mortals do. She might accept the food you left outside for her, eating with delicate appreciation for your hospitality. She blesses your home before she continues her rounds. Protection. Prosperity. The profound sensation that something vastly greater than yourself looked directly at you and found you acceptable. Children who glimpse this version of Perchta through their windows carry the memory into adulthood. They remember her as something close to a fairy tale come to life, a spirit of genuine goodness who rewarded their family's hard work. They grow up wanting to please her, wanting to earn that approving nod. But Perchta did not always walk alone. Behind her came something that turned winter storms into hunting grounds. And if you were caught outside when she rode past, you joined her procession forever. The 12 nights were dangerous for reasons beyond her inspections. Part 4. The 12 Nights Between Years. The villagers whispered a name for these nights. Rauhnakta, the rough nights. From December 25, when the old year died, until January 6, when the new year finally took hold. These were not days of celebration. They were a survival period, a time of danger, a threshold between what was and what would be, where the normal rules of reality loosened and things that usually stayed hidden walked openly through the snow-covered valleys. The year was not an abstract measurement to people in these mountains. It was a living entity, born in spring, growing strong through summer, weakening in autumn, dying in winter. December 25 marked its death, the old year finally expiring, releasing its hold on the world. January 6, Epiphany, marked the birth of the new year, fully arrived and ready to begin its own cycle. But between those dates existed something that was neither one year nor the other. A gap, a void, a space where no year existed at all. The boundaries between different realms grew dangerously thin during these nights when no year anchored reality properly. The walls that normally separated the living from the dead, the human from the supernatural, the safe from the threatening, all of them became permeable. Things leaked through. Entities that normally remained in their own domains could now visit ours. Rules that applied during the rest of the year did not function here. New rules took their place. Older rules. Stranger rules. Those who ventured outside during these nights returned changed. If they returned at all. Hair turned white overnight in men who had been young that morning. Hands trembled for the rest of their lives. They spoke of hoofbeats thundering through sky above their heads. Voices calling out in languages no one recognized. The baying of hounds that sounded nothing like earthly dogs. Some pressed themselves against trees and stayed motionless until the sounds passed. They came home with no firewood and no words for what they had witnessed. For the rest of their lives, they would not leave their houses during the 12 nights. Not for any reason. Not if the village was burning. The dead walked during the Rauhnächte. Your ancestors could return. Your recently deceased neighbors might appear at your door. Everyone who had passed beyond the veil during the previous year could come back during these 12 nights. Sometimes they came to bless the living. Sometimes they came to deliver warnings. Sometimes they came for reasons no one living could understand or explain. But they came. Spirits wandered the mountain paths. Not all of them were ghosts of dead humans. Some were far older. Nature spirits. Wild things. Beings that existed before humans, settled in the Alps, and that resented the villages now scattered across their ancient territory. They became bolder during the 12 nights, more visible, more willing to interact with the human world in ways that were rarely pleasant. The wild hunt rode through the winter skies. A ghostly procession that moved with the storms, hunting through the darkness for reasons mortals could not comprehend. Perchta led this hunt in the Alpine regions, riding at the head of the dead, the spirits, the lost souls who followed her through the gap between years. New rules governed these nights. Strange rules that everyone learned from childhood and followed without question because the consequences of violation were immediate and severe. You did not spin during the Rauhnächte. The wheel had to remain still and silent. Any thread made during this time would be cursed. Worse, the act of spinning might tangle fate itself, might catch wandering spirits in the threads, might create knots in the fabric of reality that could never be undone. But all spinning had to be finished before the 12 nights began. Perchta would inspect. If she found unfinished work, she would know you were lazy during the time when work was permitted. You did not hang laundry outside during these nights. Spirits would steal it. Use the sheets as shrouds. Wear the clothes as they wandered. If you left cloth hanging outside during the 12 nights, you might as well be inviting the dead to dress themselves in your family's possessions. You did not eat rich food on certain nights. Perchta's night especially required simple fare. Fish and grain porridge. Nothing luxurious. Nothing indulgent. Feasting belonged to other times. These nights demanded restraint, humility, discipline. You did keep your house immaculate. Every surface cleaned. Every tool in its proper place. Everything organized and ready for inspection because inspection was definitely coming. The spirits who walked during the Rauhnächte would see your home. They would judge it. They would remember. You did leave offerings for the wandering spirits. Food on the doorstep. Drink by the fire. Something to appease them, to acknowledge their presence, to show that you knew they were there and you respected their power. You did not ignore them. You did not pretend the 12 nights were ordinary time. That path led to disaster. You did finish all work before the nights began. Whatever you were supposed to accomplish during the year had to be completed. You did not carry debts or obligations into the new year. You did not leave loose ends. Perchta checked the spinning wheel, yes. But more than that, she checked whether you were the kind of person who finishes what you start. These rules seemed arbitrary to outsiders, superstitious, the kind of primitive beliefs that educated people dismissed. But there was a reason spinning mattered more than any other household task. A reason that reached back thousands of years before Perchta, before Christianity, before anyone called these mountains home. The thread was never just thread. January 5 was Perchta night, the culmination of everything, the last of the 12 nights, the final inspection, the moment when all accounts were settled. Perchta walked through every village in her territory on this night. She visited every home. She checked every spinning wheel, every hearth, every household that fell under her ancient jurisdiction. There was no escaping her attention, no hiding from her judgment. In some villages, people stayed awake all night on January 5, not from celebration, from fear. They sat by their fires, watching the door, listening for footsteps in the snow, waiting for the knock that might or might not come. They strained their ears for any indication that she was approaching their particular house. Sleep was dangerous on Perchta night. If she arrived while you were sleeping, you might not wake in time to receive her properly. You might miss the chance to show appropriate respect. You might be caught vulnerable, unable to defend yourself. Not that defense was really possible, but at least being awake let you face your judgment with open eyes. Other households took a different approach. They left food outside for her. A bowl of fish and porridge set on the table or beside the door. The exact meal she required on her feast night. If she arrived and found her offering waiting, she might be satisfied. Might eat and continue her rounds without conducting a thorough inspection. Might spare you the full examination if your hospitality demonstrated that you already understood what she expected. Some families spoke her name before sleeping. A kind of prayer or acknowledgement or invitation. Frau Perchta, you are welcome in our home. We have completed our work. We are ready for your judgment. The exact words varied, but the intent remained constant. We know you are coming. We have prepared. Please find us worthy. Dawn on January 6 brought relief so profound it felt like being born again. The 12 nights were finished. The gap had closed. The new year had fully arrived. Normal time resumed its flow. And if you had survived Perchta night with your belly intact, with silver coins instead of straw, you had earned an entire year of prosperity. If not, the village would find you in the morning, sewn up with a plowshare, stuffed with your own failure. A lesson to everyone else about what happens when you do not finish your work. Part 5. Why Spinning Mattered. Through Alpine cottages across the centuries, the same sound echoed endlessly. The spinning wheel's rhythm. A low hum punctuated by the soft click of the treadle, repeated until it became the heartbeat of winter itself. Women sat at their wheels from the moment weak dawn light touched the snow until their fingers cramped and their backs screamed for rest. Mothers watched daughters with eyes that missed nothing. A slowing wheel. A basket that emptied too slowly. Mothers-in-law watched daughters-in-law with even sharper attention. The wheel that fell silent too often drew whispers first, then warnings, then the cold understanding that this household might not survive the next winter. Girls learned the craft as young as 5 or 6. Small hands placed on the distaff, shown how to draw the fiber out with just the right tension. Too loose and the thread would be weak, useless for weaving into cloth that had to withstand years of wear. Too tight and the fiber would break, wasting precious material that could not be replaced until next autumn's harvest. Young fingers bled at first. The rough flax cut skin until calluses formed. Young backs ached from sitting hunched over the wheel hour after hour. But the work never stopped early. There were no accepted excuses about being tired or cold or bored. Because Perchta was coming. Perchta was always coming. And lazy spinners ended up stuffed with straw. The work was endless in ways modern people cannot quite grasp. First you raised sheep for wool or grew flax for linen. The planting, the tending, the harvesting took months of labor before you even began to process the raw material. Then you cleaned it, picking out debris and dirt, combing it until the fibers aligned properly. Then you finally sat at the wheel to spin. Hour after hour after hour, drawing out fiber, twisting it into thread, winding it onto spindles, one spindle at a time. One basket of flax requiring weeks to transform completely. and you needed dozens of baskets to produce enough thread for a single family's annual needs. Then you plied the thread, twisting multiple strands together for the strength required in actual use. Then you wove it into fabric or knitted it into garments. Then you cut and sewed the fabric into clothing, blankets, bedding, all the textiles a family needed to survive an alpine winter where temperatures dropped far below freezing and stayed there for months. Every step took time. Every step required skill. Every step could fail if you were careless or lazy or simply unlucky. A woman in these mountains did not go to a store when her child needed new clothes. There were no stores. There was no way to purchase thread or fabric if you failed to make it yourself. Once the mountain passes closed under meters of snow, once your village became completely isolated from the outside world, you wore what you had made with your own hands, or you wore nothing. And wearing nothing in an alpine winter meant death within hours. The fates spun thread in the old myths. In Greek tales they were called the Moirai, three sisters who controlled destiny itself. Clotho spun the thread of life at her wheel, drawing each person's existence into being. Lachesis measured how long that thread would be. Atropos cut it with her shears when the time came. Every human life was thread, spun at birth, measured through your days, cut at death. The Norse told similar stories of the Norns who sat beneath the world tree and wove fate itself into being. The women at their spinning wheels were participating in that cosmic act, whether they knew the myths or not. They were not just making thread for practical purposes. They were engaging in the work of creation, of transformation, of turning chaos into order. A spinner took raw material that was nearly useless in its natural state and transformed it into something that could preserve life itself. That transformation was sacred. That work was divine. And neglecting it was not just laziness. It was a rejection of the cosmic order, a refusal to participate in the fundamental process that kept everyone alive. Perchta enforced the sacredness of this work. She made sure the cosmic labor got done. She punished those who took their divine obligations lightly and treated survival work as optional. The belly slitting makes more sense in this light. It is not just punishment for being lazy. It is correction of cosmic disorder. It is putting the raw materials back into the body that should have transformed them. It is forcing completion of the sacred cycle one way or another. If you will not do the work while alive, Perchta will complete it through your death. The transformation will happen. That is not negotiable. Through the long, dark months, when snow buried the world and cold crept through every crack in every wall, the spinning wheels hummed. Women worked by firelight and candlelight, straining their eyes, cramping their fingers, pushing through exhaustion and pain because the alternative was death. Not metaphorical death, not spiritual death. Actual physical death by freezing when the clothes ran out and there was nothing to replace them. Perchta's threat of belly slitting was excessive, but these were not normal circumstances. A woman who did not spin could doom her entire family, could leave them without the textiles they needed to survive months of brutal cold. The terror had a function, and the function was survival. But Perchta herself was changing. What started as a radiant goddess whose name meant bright and shining was being transformed into something the church could use as a weapon. The campaign took centuries, and it nearly succeeded. Part 6. From Goddess to Demon. Perchta was not always a demon. She was not always a figure of terror, a belly slitter, a creature from horror stories told to frighten children. That is what she became, but it is not what she started as. Her name means bright, shining, radiant. That is not the kind of name you give to something evil. Her association with spinning connects her to fate goddesses across cultures that shared common origins. Her dual nature, beautiful and terrible, rewarding and punishing, matches the pattern of deities who embodied natural forces and cosmic principles. She was probably a goddess of the winter solstice, of the transition between years, of spinning and fate in the household. Communities worshipped her. They left offerings for her. They celebrated her during the darkest nights of the year. She was not feared the way demons are feared. She was respected, honored, given the reverence due to something powerful that could help or harm depending on how you treated it. Then Christianity spread through the Alps in the 6th and 7th centuries. Missionaries built churches on the sites where Perchta had been worshipped. They adopted her festivals and gave them Christian names. They told people that their old faith was not completely wrong, just incomplete. The new god would not replace the old goddess, but complete her. For centuries, this strategy seemed to work. People went to churches, had their children baptized, listened to Christian sermons. But secretly, in the quiet of their homes, they continued to set food outside the door for Perchta. Secretly, they told their children the old stories. Secretly, they kept the tradition alive. The church realized it had been deceived. People had not accepted Christianity. They had only added it to their old faith. Perchta had not disappeared. She had only become more hidden. And that was even more dangerous for the church's authority. In the 15th century, church leaders decided to proceed more harshly. If they could not destroy Perchta, they would demonize her. If people would not give up their beloved goddess, they would learn to fear her as something wicked. The first step was renaming. From Perchta the Radiant came Perchta the Feared. The priests began explaining from their pulpits that the Perchtan were not sacred spirits but terrible monsters, devilish figures who went about at night threatening the faithful. What had once been considered a blessing was now portrayed as a curse. The campaign was systematic and ruthless. By the year 1468, a widely respected collection of knowledge officially forbade the Perchta cult in Bavaria and prohibited people from bringing her offerings at Christmas. The prohibition was comprehensive. It forbade praying to Perchta, bringing her offerings, telling her stories, performing her rituals. It threatened severe punishments for violations. But the people didn't give up easily. They went underground. They gathered secretly in forests where no priest could overhear. They developed coded language and hidden symbols. They told the stories only in whispers, only to trusted family, only to their own children who would carry the tradition forward. The church could threaten, could punish individual families as examples, could make public declarations, but it could not enter people's minds. It could not control what grandmothers whispered to grandchildren in the privacy of their cottages when snow muffled all sound and no authority could prove what words had been spoken. From the 15th through the 17th centuries, the persecution intensified during the great witch hunts. Tens of thousands went to the stake across Europe. Germany was one of the worst regions for these burnings. In this climate of religious panic and violent enforcement, Perchta was officially declared a witch. The loving protector became portrayed as an evil child killer. The leader of the wild hunt became described as the leader of witches' Sabbaths. The judge of diligence became painted as a torturer of the innocent. The church took all of Perchta's positive qualities and inverted them. Her love for children became twisted into a desire to murder children. Her oversight of spinning work became described as cruel punishment of even the diligent. Her role as guide for dead souls became reframed as seduction of the innocent into damnation. Every good thing she had done was reinterpreted as evil. Every blessing was recounted as a curse in disguise. By the 18th century, the transformation was nearly complete. Perchta was no longer remembered as the radiant goddess of the Alps. She had become a monster in folk memory. Her beautiful white robes became described as black rags. Her loving face was told to be distorted into an iron mask of cruelty. Her blessing hands now carried only knives and chains in the stories. The new version of Perchta was so terrible that people actually began to distance themselves from her. Mothers stopped telling their children about the loving goddess who rewarded good work. Instead, they frightened them with tales of the terrible witch who punished everything. The church had won, or so it seemed. But the people found a way to keep her alive. A way so clever that the church could not stop it even when they recognized what was happening. They turned Perchta's monstrous new image into armor, into protection. The masks became resistance. In remote valleys where church authority was weakest, in isolated farmhouses where tradition was strongest, in the hearts of women and children who remembered the old stories, something of the true Perchta survived. Hidden, disguised, adapted, but not dead. People began wearing masks. They disguised themselves as Perchtan, as the terrible monsters their goddess had been transformed into. But underneath the grotesque faces, they hid their true expressions and their true intentions. In the wild dances and deafening noise and seemingly chaotic rituals, they preserved memories of what Perchta had once been. The church had transformed Perchta into a monster. But the people made a mask from that monster. A mask under which they could keep their goddess alive. The war had been won by the church, but the goddess had survived the victory. Part 7. The Wild Hunt and Her Retinue. Frau Perchta does not walk alone. Behind her, always following, never leading because she is the mistress and they are the followers, comes a procession unlike anything else in European folklore. They are called the Perchtan, and they are as varied and strange and terrifying as the goddess they serve. You hear them before you see them. Bells ring, not the pleasant sound of church bells calling people to worship, but harsh, discordant clanging. Dozens of bells all sounding at once, creating a wall of noise that announces their presence from miles away. Then voices join the cacophony, howling, shrieking, making sounds like wind through mountain passes, like avalanches beginning, like the voices of the dead calling out for companionship. Then you see them approaching through the snow, masked figures with animal faces, wolves, bears, goats, creatures that do not exist in any natural taxonomy. Horns sprout from their heads, twisted and curving, sometimes decorated with ribbons, sometimes left bare and threatening. Fur covers their bodies, real animal pelts making them look like beasts that learned to walk upright but never quite mastered humanity. Their claws might be carved from wood or bone, but they look sharp enough to tear flesh. They move erratically, not walking in orderly lines but running, leaping, dancing, chasing. Some carry torches that cast wild shadows across the snow. Some carry switches or whips for driving away spirits. Some carry things you cannot quite identify in the darkness. And at the center of this chaos, moving with perfect calm and purpose, comes Perchta herself. Some of the Perchtan were human once. They joined Perchta's procession by accident or by curse. Caught outside during the 12 nights, swept up in the wild hunt, unable to find their way back to the world of the living. Now they belong to her forever, unable to return to the lives they left behind. Others are spirits who exist only during the 12 nights and dissolve back into nothing when the gap between years closes and normal time resumes. The stories tell of young men who stepped outside their homes during the 12 nights and never returned. Their families searched at dawn and found footprints in the snow leading away from the house. But the footprints did not stop at the forest edge or at any logical destination. They simply ended in the middle of open fields, as if the person had been lifted into the air. No one saw them again until the following winter, when the Perchtan ran through the village. Mothers recognized their sons despite the masks. They knew their children's walks, their builds, the way they held their shoulders. They called their names. The masked figures turned toward them for just a moment, then continued running with the procession. They had become Perchtan. They would run with Perchta forever. Some of the Perchtan are the souls of the unbaptized dead, infants who died before receiving the sacrament that would have granted them access to heaven according to church doctrine. Perchta gathers these lost children, leads them, becomes their mother in a way the church never could. They follow her through the winter nights as part of her procession. Small shapes in the chaos. Tiny voices in the noise. A reminder that death comes for everyone, even those who barely had a chance to live. The procession moves through villages like a storm. It blesses some houses and curses others. It fills the night with noise and chaos and a kind of savage energy that cannot be contained or controlled. The Perchten divide into two distinct categories. The Schöne Perchten, the beautiful Perchten, wear elegant masks with serene faces. They dress in white or bright colors. They move gracefully, in deliberate contrast to the chaotic rushing of their counterparts. They represent the blessing aspect of Perchta, the reward rather than the punishment, the promise of fertility and prosperity. Where they walk, good fortune follows. The Skjak Perchten, the ugly Perchten, are their opposite. Their masks are monstrous, with exaggerated features, bulging eyes, gaping mouths full of fangs. They are covered in dark fur or rough cloth. They carry bells that clang discordantly. They run and leap and sometimes chase people through the streets. They are terrifying by design, but they are not evil. Their purpose is to drive away evil spirits, to chase away the uncontrolled chaos that threatens villages during the dangerous 12 nights. Both types walk together in the processions. They are not separate groups with separate purposes. They are two aspects of the same phenomenon, two faces of Perchta manifested in her followers. Perchta also leads the wild hunt itself, one of the most widespread mythological motifs in northern and central Europe. A spectral procession that rides through winter storms, hunting through the darkness for reasons mortals cannot comprehend. In most regions, the leader is male, often Odin from Norse mythology. But in the Alps, the leader is frequently Perchta. She rides through the storms. She leads the dead. She is queen of the wild hunt in these mountains. When winter storms descended from the peaks, villagers heard them clearly. Hoofbeats thundering across the sky above their heads. The baying of hounds that sounded nothing like earthly dogs. Voices calling out in languages no one recognized. The wind itself seemed to carry words, commands, the sounds of something massive moving through the air just beyond sight. The elders told the young that this was Perchta's hunt passing over, that the storm was not just weather, but the goddess leading her army of the dead through the night, that anyone foolish enough to be caught outside when the hunt passed would be swept up and carried away forever. The storm was hers. Every howling wind was her voice. Even if you had finished your spinning, even if your house was clean, even if you had done everything right, she was still out there, still riding, still leading the dead through the darkness. The wild hunt was a reminder of her true power. She was not just a household inspector concerned with spinning wheels and clean floors. She was a deity of death and fate, of the boundary between worlds, of the terrible cosmic forces that moved through winter darkness. And her rules extended beyond spinning. On her night, you ate what she commanded. Only fish, only porridge, nothing else. Those who thought that rule was superstition learned otherwise. Their families found them at dawn with their bellies stuffed full of the correction. Part 8. The Sacred Meal. On Perchta night, you ate what Perchta commanded you to eat. Fish and grain porridge. That was the traditional meal. The only acceptable meal for January 5. Not one option among several. Not a suggestion that could be ignored if you preferred something else. The only food that would not get you killed. The specific type of fish varied depending on which valley you lived in. Herring was common in areas with access to trade routes from the coast. Carp was traditional in places with fish ponds. Trout from mountain streams. Whatever fish was available after months of winter, preserved by smoking or salting, or simply kept frozen by the brutal cold. The porridge was even simpler. Oats or barley cooked into thick gruel. No butter, because that was too rich. No cream, because that was too luxurious. No honey or spices or any kind of enhancement. Plain, humble, sustaining. Nothing more. The stories tell of households that ignored tradition. Families that returned from successful hunting with fresh venison or pork. Men who insisted that God would not mind if they enjoyed the fruits of honest labor. That superstition about an ancient goddess should not dictate what Christian people ate in their own homes. That they were tired of living in fear of pagan nonsense. They roasted the meat on January 5. The meat was rich and fatty, the best thing the families had eaten in months. The children devoured it eagerly. The women ate more slowly, listening to every sound from outside, jumping at every creak of the house settling in the cold. The men mocked their fear, spoke of education and civilization and leaving primitive beliefs behind. At dawn on January 6, the families woke to find the men missing from their beds. They found them in their kitchens. Their bellies had been opened. The venison was gone. The pork was gone. In their places, fish and porridge filled their abdominal cavities, packed in so tightly that it bulged against the rough stitches holding them closed. The plowshare needle had left distinctive marks, larger than any normal sewing could create. Perchta had corrected their diets, had given them the meals they should have eaten, had taught them the lessons they refused to learn through voluntary compliance. Fish are boundary creatures. They live in water, a substance associated with death in many cultures, with the underworld, with passage between realms. They are neither fully of the earth nor of the air. They exist in a medium that humans cannot survive in, a world we can see but cannot enter. During a threshold time, during the gap between years when no normal year existed, boundary food was appropriate. Fish matched the energy of the liminal period. Eating something solidly of the earth, like beef or pork, would be jarring, inappropriate, a violation of cosmic harmony that Perchta could not allow. Smart households did not wait for Perchta to conduct a full inspection. They left food outside for her before going to sleep on Perchta night. A bowl of fish and porridge placed on the table or beside the door. An offering. An appeasement. A signal that this household understood the rules and was prepared to follow them willingly. If Perchta arrived and found her meal waiting, she might be satisfied. Might eat, or at least acknowledge the offering. Might move on without conducting the thorough examination that could reveal smaller failures. Some families went further. They spoke to her directly, addressing the empty room as they set out the food. Frau Perchta, you are welcome in our home. We offer you this meal with respect. We have completed our work and are ready for your judgment. The exact words varied from household to household, but the intent was universal. We see you. We honor you. Please let us survive the night. Whether Perchta actually consumed the physical food was never entirely clear. In the morning, the bowl might be empty, or it might still be full. But regardless of the theology, the tradition continued. Every Perchta night across the Alpine regions, bowls of fish and porridge appeared on tables and doorsteps. Better to offer and have it ignored than to fail to offer and face the consequences. The church persecuted her for 600 years. They burned people at the stake for speaking her name. They rewrote her as a demon, a child killer, a witch. They thought they had destroyed her. They were wrong. Final part. She walks still. Today in Austria and Bavaria and Switzerland, the Perchta runs happen every winter. Elaborate celebrations that attract thousands of participants and tens of thousands of spectators. The costumes take months to create. Masks carved from wood with intricate detail, decorated with horns and fur and features that would fit perfectly in any horror film. Real animal pelts carefully preserved and sewn together. Bells sourced from specific foundries, chosen for their particular tone and weight. Some participants wear bells that weigh 30 kilograms or more, carrying that weight through hours of dancing and running. The preparation begins in autumn. Carvers work on masks for weeks, shaping blocks of wood into faces that have been passed down through generations. Some families have been making the same mask designs for centuries. The knowledge is transmitted carefully from father to son, from master carver to apprentice. These are not random designs. They carry meaning, history, a connection to something older than anyone can fully articulate. The Frau dominate these modern events. The ugly ones. The terrifying ones. They run through village streets, chasing spectators, ringing their bells, embodying the chaos that Perchta's retinue always represented. Children scream and flee in mock terror that might not be entirely mock. Adults, too, get caught up in the moment, running from the masked figures, remembering perhaps some ancestral fear buried so deep they did not know they carried it. It has become a tourist attraction. People travel from around the world to see the Perchta runs, to experience the strange thrill of being chased by demons through a snow-covered Austrian village. Hotels book up months in advance. Television crews film the processions. The events have official websites, ticketing systems, all the infrastructure of modern tourism. Social media fills with photographs of the masks, the costumes, the spectacular visual chaos. But something authentic remains underneath the commercial surface. Talk to the people who wear the masks, who carve them by hand, who have inherited the tradition from their parents and grandparents. For many of them, this is not just performance. It is not just cultural heritage or a way to attract tourist money. It is something that matters on a deeper level. Something that connects them to their ancestors, to their land, to a past that the modern world has mostly forgotten. They will tell you about the feeling of putting on the mask, about how something changes when they do it, about how they are not quite themselves when they run through the streets making noise and chasing people. They become something older, something wilder, something that serves Perchta, whether they consciously believe in her or not. The mask carvers in Salzburg explain it in their workshops. The wood tells you what the mask should be. You do not decide. You listen. You carve away what does not belong until the face that was always there becomes visible. Every mask is different because every piece of wood carries different memories. When someone puts on the mask, they are not pretending to be a Perchta. They are allowing the Perchta that lives in the wood to use their body for a few hours, to walk again, to chase away evil. To remember what it was like when Perchta walked these mountains as a goddess instead of as a memory. Perchta survives because the people kept her alive. The church tried for 600 years to erase her. It failed. Modern skepticism says she was never real, that she is just folklore, just stories told by primitive people who did not understand the natural world. But the masks are still being carved. The bells are still being rung. The processions still run through the snow on the darkest nights of winter. Tonight, somewhere in the Austrian Alps, Perchta walks. The spinning wheels she inspects exist only in museums now. The last professional hand spinners died generations ago. But she still checks. She opens doors or passes through them, examines the wheel, runs her fingers along the spindle. The basket where unspun fiber should be stored stands empty. Has been empty for decades. Will remain empty unless some artisan decides to take up hand spinning as an expensive hobby. Does she understand that the world has changed? That her specific concerns have become irrelevant? The stories do not tell us. They never anticipated a world where spinning would not matter. But the fear she represents runs deeper than spinning wheels, deeper than medieval household economics. It is the fear of being judged, of being held to a standard and found wanting. The answer determines which face you see, the beautiful woman in white with her silver coins, or the hag with the iron nose and the knife. Your actions make that choice, not your intentions, not your excuses, your results. The archive closes. Have you finished your work? Perchta is still checking. This archive stays open because people like you believe these truths matter. If the forgotten consequences of our ancestors mean something to you, if you believe these stories should not be lost to comfortable modern ignorance, help us continue this work by liking this video and subscribing to the Pandora's Project. Leave your answer in the comments below. What frightens you more? Chaos you cannot predict, or judgment you cannot escape? And where are you watching from? We gather these stories from every culture that remembers when the old gods walked. Stay curious out there. See you in the next tomb.